Are your thoughts secretly sabotaging your success? You see, you might think that you're in control, but the truth is that your mind might be your own worst enemy. Stick with me because in the next few minutes, I'm going to help you to uncover the thought patterns that are quietly destroying your life and what you can do to take back control. My name is Crystal Armstrong, and I am a men's transformation expert, helping men to shift from burnout to brilliance, from drained to driven. I work with the unconscious mind and help men to reclaim the power of the human mind because we have been given a tremendous gift. The human mind is infinitely powerful. However, no one has taught us how to think. We grew up in schools and in society that really did its best to make sure that we would think in a way that serves those that are in power because it's much easier to control those that don't know how to think properly rather than those that have the capacity to really understand the true power of the human mind. Let's talk about the problems. Thought patterns that are negative are keeping you down. We have a tendency as humans to focus on negative thoughts. There's this negativity bias, which really says that generally 80% of any of the thoughts that we're going to think are going to be negatively oriented because that has allowed us to survive. And it is possible to rewire even though we have this tendency to go towards negativity. Negativity can help us to survive, but it definitely doesn't help us to thrive. It doesn't help us to focus on long-term projects and long-term outcomes and create detailed and very complex solutions to bigger problems. A lot of us deal with anxiety, this tendency to think in the future and to expect negative outcomes in the future really has to do with catastrophic thinking. The thought that because I've experienced a bad situation in the past, I have to anticipate a worst case scenario in the future. Now, this takes us out of the present moment, which we could argue really is the only moment that exists. Now is now, and when it was in the past, it was now, and in the future, it will be now. However, we get stuck worrying about the past and projecting into the future based on these worst case experiences. Another problem that we experience is that we believe that we are the mind. We believe that our thoughts are us instead of a product of our inability to control our thinking. Now, another issue that we're going to deal with is limiting beliefs. These are the beliefs that we have essentially adopted to be true in our life, even though they're not true universally. And they tend to limit our possibilities. They tend to limit our ability to see opportunities, and they limit our ability to focus on the highest and best outcome. These negative beliefs can range from anything from I'm not good enough, I don't deserve love, all the way to everybody's out to get me, and people aren't worth trusting. Now, I want to talk about one more challenge that we experience, which is this understanding that perception is interpretation. And what this means is that essentially I'm going to interpret everything that happens based on who I am and what I believe to be true. Why is it that a group of 10 people could receive bad news from their employer, and let's say 8 of them are going to freak out and 2 of them are going to be fine, and they're not going to let themselves be bothered by it? It's because we're interpreting that information based on our negative beliefs, our experiences, our traumas, our emotional baggage. And so that's why it's really important for us to take control of our thinking, because if we don't understand how the conscious mind works, especially in interaction with the unconscious mind, then we are going to limit ourselves to that 5 or 10% capacity that we have heard on repeat, that humans are only accessing 5 or 10% of their mind. And that's because no one has taught us how to think. But it's time to take back control. Why are we doing this? It's very simple. The negative thinking and these thought patterns that we get stuck in have tremendous negative effects on our mental and emotional health. Things like stress, anxiety, depression, things that lead to ultimately coping mechanisms, substance abuse, unhealthy relationships, meaningless sex. These have tremendous negative effects on our body. And this has to do with how the mind works. Essentially, we get information through our senses. It creates a mental picture based on what we're perceiving. That mental picture creates thoughts. The thoughts then create emotions. Those emotions create hormones and chemicals in our body, which then affect our physical body, and it affects how we behave. And so it's really hard for us to behave in an ideal way if we're stuck with thoughts that create negative emotions, that create hormones and chemicals that prevent us from really being able to step up and live the way that we want to. This essentially accumulates over a period of time and can really damage the body. That's why things like cancer and serious illnesses, adrenal fatigue, fatigue in the liver and the organs, chronic issues with the organs, why this stuff appears is because it's essentially just a projection of negative thinking over a long period of time. Now, the cool thing is that science has helped us to understand something called neuroplasticity. Really, what it is that neurons that fire together are going to wire together, but neuroplasticity shows us that we can change those pathways by changing our thinking. The reason that this is so important is because heaven and hell exist now, and they exist in your mind. In the Bible, it says the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. And that really is the understanding that heaven and hell aren't some place that we're going to go in the future someday after we leave this body. Heaven and hell exists now. Heaven and hell really is based on how we choose to think and how we choose to interpret our world. Now, let's talk about some examples of this. One of my clients, let's call him John, he would immediately go to this worst case scenario. Anything that would happen in his life, a call from his boss, he would immediately think, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. A complaint from a client, he would immediately think, I'm going to lose this client, I'm going to lose my commission. And this would happen every single day. And it was based off of when he was a child, he was experiencing so many negative situations, especially in relationship to his father, that he always had to be prepared and embracing for that worst case situation. And this eventually created this hardwired system in his mind where he then automatically would go to the worst case situation. This overgeneralization would then essentially cause him to live in a state of being braced all the time and expecting the worst to happen. This again came from his relationship with his father. We were able to release the emotional baggage and the limiting beliefs associated with it. And then eventually he was able to start changing his neural pathways because he could see those thought patterns when they would come up, and then he could choose a different path. So how do we do this? Well, the first and foremost thing that we can do is we can release and rewire our limiting beliefs. Those limiting beliefs like I'm not good enough, I don't deserve love, I don't deserve success. And if you're interested in doing that, follow the link below in the description and you can get access to my limiting beliefs breaker cheat sheet that is going to help you to engage in 2 exercises that with 10 to 15 minutes, you can start to reframe your limiting beliefs after you identify them so that you can then access new thought patterns. And that's something that you can get for free by following the description below. You can also start to create new strategies. When you identified an old strategy that's no longer working, you can identify it, figure out what the details are on the strategy. Okay, I'm noticing that I'm thinking this negative thought. It happens every day. Cool. What am I thinking? What do I think after that? What happens after that? What do I do? And write that strategy out. And then once you do that, you can write a new strategy, close your eyes, and practice visualization. Because the cool thing is that your unconscious mind and your body don't know the difference between an imagined scenario and quote unquote real life. So you can visualize the ideal outcome and the ideal situation, and your body and your unconscious mind will learn it and create that as the new habit going forward. I want you to understand that even though this work is not easy, it has a tremendous, tremendous impact on you. By rewiring the mind, rewiring the limiting beliefs, letting go of the emotional baggage, you can have a completely different outcome. Remember, perception is interpretation. If you have a different setting in your computer system, then you're going to interpret the world differently and you're going to have different experiences. Now, the best way to do this is to work one-on-one with a coach, especially someone who's been trained with techniques that are proven to do this easily and effectively. That's why I am a certified neurolinguistic programming coach. I work with NLP, which is a powerful technique for speaking to the unconscious mind and rewiring based off of the most effective models and the most effective coaches in the world, that we can change our internal landscape, change our thinking, release emotional baggage, very, very simply in just a matter of hours rather than spending months, years, and potentially decades in cognitive behavioral therapy, working with a therapist, and we can make massive change in just as little as 8 hours. So if you're interested in working with me on one-on-one, there's a link below where you can sign up for a transformation strategy session so that you can learn more about really the pathway from where you are now, where your thought patterns are destroying your life, to the next step forward, which is releasing those thought patterns and creating your life using positive, empowering thought patterns. I hope that this has been informational for you. Once again, my name is Crystal Armstrong, men's transformation expert. If you have any more questions, just check out the links below in the description, and I look forward to hearing from you in the future.